The Seattle Seahawks did not get it done today. They were unable to close out a game that was in their grasp. There was no reason that they should have lost this game, but they did. They did. You leave this game in the first half, you're thinking 24-9, I'm going to work. If you work on a Sunday, I'm sorry if you do. You're going to wherever you're going and you're thinking, they got this. Well, the Titans come roaring back and they win this football game 33-30 with a leader in Derrick Henry, who ultimately led his team to victory. The key of why Seattle lost this football game is single-handedly because of Derrick Henry and the beast of that man. He is just a fantastic football player week in and week out. Every time I see him play, I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, I hope Seattle doesn't play him. And thankfully, Seattle doesn't play him much because they're not in the same conference, not in the same division. And I'm glad because, man, if Derrick Henry faced Seattle, they would be, I don't know what they would be doing. It's kind of interesting. Almost every game I feel like the Seahawks have played the Titans, almost every time, they have been able to stop Derrick Henry in the first half, but then the second half comes and fatigue comes and they just start getting beat up and they go from, hey, we're containing this man to, oh my gosh, he just ran for 80. Oh my gosh, he just ran for 60. And that was the theme of this football game. There was a lot of dynamics that I think went well for Seattle in this one, but really the loss is the highlight. You know, at the end of the day, you didn't win the game, and that's what's important, and that's what fans want to see. A lot of people are calling for the firing of Pete Carroll. My goodness gracious, it's 2 weeks. It's not that big of a deal. In my personal opinion, I think that this team will be a better team after this loss. It'll teach them a lot of things. It'll grow them in ways that the win may have not grown them. They're going to have to learn from this. I think the biggest reason as to why they lost this game was, like I said, Derrick Henry. But I also think the time of possession. Seattle was on the football field 22 minutes of the 67 minutes of game time. 44 minutes was given to the Titans. That is not going to be a good thing for your defense. That defense is going to be fatigued. The offense has got to be on the football field longer. You know, there was a moment in that first half where they had 3 touchdown drives in a row, and they were terrific. But the thing is it only took up about 3 minutes. And in the moment, it didn't seem that bad. But being hindsight 2020, they were unable to stay on the football field for a long time or an extended period of time. And what's crazy is it was a tale of two halves. First half, they scored 24 points. The second half, an overtime period, they scored 6 with obviously the missed point after tip. And, you know, I was watching the game with a friend and he constantly talked about, was that the reason they lost this game? Because the Titans would have had to go for a 2-point conversion had Jason Myers converted the point after attempt, and unfortunately he did not. And so the Titans come back on the field, they go down the field and they score. And you're thinking, okay, overtime period, Titans get the ball and they don't get anything. Offense comes on the field, offense just lays a goose egg. They just did not get anything crafted well. The lack of an offense that was balanced was the key, I think, as why Seattle couldn't win this game. Last week, they were able to have the tight ends. They were able to have a run game. This week, neither of those elements were in the game, and they became very one-dimensional, where they were only really targeting receivers. And, you know, there was at one point in time, Alex Collins came into the game, had a 25-yard rush, and he was to never be found again. It doesn't mean that this team can't fix these things and can't change these things for future weeks, but it was very shocking to see the way that they did not close out this game. You know, you go into the second half, you see Pete Carroll who's pumping up the crowd. In the second half, they just fell off. It was just so shocking to see the change of a team from one half to another. But I think fatigue got to them. I think the fact that they were very one-dimensional today, where they only had a passing game, got to them. It just, you know, it's like they had the deep passes, but that's the thing is Seattle has deep passes, and I think that's great. You utilize that with Russell Wilson, but you got to have a short passing game as well, and to get smaller yards to gain or less yards to gain the first down. You know, you don't want to always be having 2nd and 10s, 3rd and 10s, because your chance of converting those are very unlikely. But with that being said, I think Seattle corrects these issues. You know, that one moment though, the Julio Jones touchdown catch, Seattle got a break. I'm not going to say if it was or was in bounds or out of bounds. It was such a hard call. It looked like it was out of bounds, but it looked like it was in bounds. Part of me was like, a bit surprised by that rule. I thought if you just had the tip of the cleat, you're in, but obviously the referee explained it and made more sense to me. But who knows? At the end of the day, that was the call. Regardless, that didn't play a factor. But then, DJ Reed, he's staring at the man, taunting, and it's a 15-yard penalty, and such a great moment of the game turns to horror for Seahawks, continues to drive for the Titans, and I believe they score on that drive as well. Those were the reasons that they lost this game. Just mistakes, costly mistakes late in the game, and it just led them to a loss. It does not mean they can't fix these issues. Just remind yourself, if you're a Hawks fan, if you're a fan of football, I don't think Seattle's like, oh, it's a panic and you freak out. I think they will correct these issues and they will get better for future weeks. But I will say that the lack of incorporation of the tight ends and the lack of a run game were the two biggest factors as to why Seattle could not close this game out. They had a 2-possession lead, and it was more than in their grasp to win this. They went into the fourth quarter up 14 or 15. They could not get it done. But that doesn't mean that the season's over, guys. It's 2 weeks. They get an extra week. Obviously, with now 17 games instead of 16, I think Seattle will correct these issues. I think next week they'll come out and do a much better job than they did this week in closing out games. I mean, it's all about the 4 quarters of football, and unfortunately, they did great. They started well, but they did not finish well. And I think the mantra of Pete Carroll and his teams is all about finishing well. We would see constant times, even the Super Bowl years, they would start out slow, but their finish was spot on. This time it was different. They started off, maybe that first quarter not so great, but the second quarter, they were getting it going. And then they fell off. So the key, I think, for them moving forward is making sure they can sustain a positive type of gain on offense and also have more time of possession. More balance, I think, is the key for them in the future games. Let me know your thoughts, though, why you think they lost this game. It's sad to see, man. I really was watching with a friend, and I was like, man, they're going to win this game. We were just excited. First half was great, and then just second half came, and you're like, oh, this is the 2020 Seahawks, or this was the Seahawks of old. And I don't want to say that because I don't think they are the Seahawks of old, but they had the game. There was, in my opinion, there's no reason they should have been in the situation they were in. They should have been, I should be talking right now about a game where the Seahawks won 45-24, but instead I'm talking about how they lost 33-30. And I don't think that should have happened. I mean, it just did not seem characteristic of what was going to happen in this game, considering how they played in the first half. But it is, and now Seattle's got to find ways to correct it, and I think they will. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support that you guys give me from each video that I create here on this channel. I'm so excited to continue making you more and more content.